Hello, and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 112. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me this week are my co-host, Zach Roberts. Zach, how you doing?
I'm alive. How you doing?
Good. Glad to hear. And he should be a co-host, Craig Stampley.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Excellent. How's everything in Australia?
It's a little bit cool and overcast today, but lovely otherwise.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, we have a wonderful show for you all to talk about tonight. A lot of fun, interesting topics. And leading up those topics are our guests for this week, returning guest panelists, one of our favorites, Miss Jamie Rose. Jamie, how you doing?
So ready to battle with Zach. It's just really awesome.
Oh, yeah. Let's get ready to rumble.
He's already pulled politics in before we even got this thing started, so I just want to apologize.
Black Panther?
We'll have to create the live stream preview and make that like a Patreon exclusive. You get to see what we talk about before we start the show. That's like
we should animate it.
Animate
it definitely shouldn't just be our voices. There should be like lots of animations of Zach and I battling with ninja swords or something.
I like it. And as you all know, I love anime, so all right. Which is, by the poster behind me. Anyways, we got a lot to talk about. Before we do that, Ken, for our members of our audience who aren't familiar with your work, Jamie, please give us the quick rundown on who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'm Jamie Rose. I am the co-owner of Momenta Group, which operates Momenta Workshops and Momenta Creative. So we do training programs around the world for journalists and aspiring photojournalists and documentary photographers. And then our creative service division is Momenta Creative, and we use a lot of people who actually come on our workshops to do creative services around the globe as well. And so we work primarily with nonprofit organizations, but we do for-profit organizations and government work as well.
Excellent. Great. So we got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's just get on with the show. Our first topic this evening is all stuff that you actually recommended to us that we talk about. So again, I'm going to kind of introduce this and throw it over you to sort of talk about, and then we can kind of throw it around. So we're going to talk about business skills, not-for-profit photography, and using social media and marketing. So which one of those do you want to start with, Jamie?
Whoa, anyone. I don't care. You guys can ask me any questions on any of those topics that you asked me what I was an expert on.
Okay, let's start with business skills. What are some business skills that a visual journalist should have?
Where do I begin? What do you mean? What's the most important? I mean, it's tax season. What's one of the most important things that you can think of, like, that people should be doing that they don't?
Well, in terms of tax season, we can get super nerdy. The first thing I think everyone needs is really proper, good insurance coverage. Paul McGonigal of Weaver Brothers in Bethesda, Maryland, is hands down the best insurer I've found for gear. I know a lot of people like to go through professional organizations, but when I was an independent photographer and I was looking for really good insurance that would have what is called an inland marine policy, because there's a really funny way that insurance companies get around the concept of gear that moves. So if you have a home office, they might insure, let's say, $50,000 worth of your computers and hard drives and, headphones and all the other stuff that you have. But if you don't specify the fact that it's not a home studio and you're actually going to be taking your gear on the road with you, you need a policy that allows you to travel. And so Paul was the first person who kind of explained that to me. And he was also the first person to say, like, how much is your gear worth? And I totaled it all up, and I was super nerdy about, do I want replacement or do I want just, damages or whatever? And he said, okay, so you've just given me like every single piece of equipment. Is it always traveling with you though? Do you need to always do that? And there were a lot of things that I was actually just using at home that I didn't need to insure. So, we as Americans, Australian, sorry, I don't know if you guys are like this, but are usually overinsured in a lot of ways. However, really making sure that your gear is covered is important. And I think it was Colin Pearson who was the photographer. He did a blog post called my $25,000 wedding job. And it was about how he was standing at valet parking with his rolly bag to walk into a wedding, and he had one camera around his shoulder, and as he paid the valet guy, somebody grabbed his bag literally right from like behind his back and just walked away with it. And a black innocuous rolly bag is not something that anyone would think to stop someone. And all of his gear was gone. He had one camera, one lens, and one card to shoot the rest of the wedding with. Wow. He thankfully, I think, had someone bring him some cards, but that bag of gear cost him $25,000. And if I remember the moral of the, he wasn't insured, and so all that stuff just went away. So that's the first part of just making sure that you're acting like a professional. The second most important business skill, I think, is probably not a physical or paid service. It's actually taking your ego and putting it into a storage box and locking it somewhere and accepting the fact that you just don't know everything about business skills, and you need to learn, and you need to take classes, and you need to take workshops, and you need to read books, and you need to subscribe to things that aren't just petapixel and, mashable photo. Like, you have to start reading industry news and learning about things that are really important. And so, I take workshops all the time. It's just I don't take photo workshops anymore. I'm listening to webinars about grant writing, or I'm learning about QuickBooks or something horrible like that is painful and torture. So I think, the concept of constantly be learning, it's important with what we do. Like, we're going to talk about some of the other topics that you guys had for like camera gear and things like that. But in order to make certain that you know what you're doing, you need to accept the fact that you don't know what you're doing about business if you're just starting out. And then the next thing I would say is like get FreshBooks or QuickBooks, or I don't know what you guys are using for any sort of.
I use Flowbooks.
Really? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's by hand. Yeah. With like.
I've got Zero down here.
I have Procrastinate books. That's what I.
You'll be surprised that I actually have self-employed QuickBooks, the app and everything like that built in. For some reason, I would think that people would be surprised that I'm actually that organized when it comes to that.
I'm surprised by that. It's very traditional of you.
Zach is a traditionalist, after all.
Oh yeah.
Just
traditional values. You mentioned putting away your business, taking your ego and putting into a box. I would also recommend digging a hole, putting that box into the hole, and then burying the box, and then putting something on top of the, just to make sure that ego never comes back.
Fly to Hawaii, drop it in a volcano.
Right. Ron will take it.
That'd make a good photo.
But like when you're doing that, I think the funny thing about the business skills aspect of it, like somebody asked me, like, what's changed in your teaching over, because we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary of Momenta Workshops.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah. Thank you. It's huge. So this year is our 10-year anniversary, and we started doing our one-day business skills workshops, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago. And just in that amount of time, crowdfunding has exploded. Kickstarter has like spiked all the way to the top and then crashed and burned and then come back around. There, like, new crowdfunding platforms have come and gone, and there are databases and all of these different technological solutions that are out there to really helping people with business skills. But I think, honestly, the thing that's changed like the most in the negative, it comes down to that sort of ego and also just frustration and anger at all of the different technology that's out there. Like, oh, it's so complicated now. Well, it's your job. I mean, as my husband and business partner says, like, they don't call it work because it's always fun. It's called work because it's work. Like, you have to actually work at it. And I think that it's hard to explain to creative people, like, stop your creative brain and focus on something that is like pretty linear and pretty static and pretty staid. And it's not always fun, but it's necessary because, as you know, Zach and I know, because we've had this conversation before in the last like 6 months, like, it's really hard for people to say, like, or for people that come to me when they're asking for business advice and they're like, the world is against me, everything is terrible, and nobody respects photographers. And then I go onto their website, and don't get me wrong, like, I haven't updated my website in like 10 years or something insane.
Don't talk to me about that either.
But I update Momenta's website. I mean, we update Momenta's website like multiple times a week, and we are blogging, and we are making sure that our social media networks are full, and we are out there, you know, and it's time consuming. It's hard to do that. And of course, like, I would love to say, like, every time I'm on Facebook, all I do is like troll my friends' baby pictures, but I'm not. I'm reading what you guys are all saying and trying to make sure that I'm keeping up on the industry and I know what the hell I'm talking about. And I think that a lot of people kind of think that it's supposed to be easy. There's this like magic bullet that is just going to make it all better. And they'll say, like, my business is failing. And I go on their website and I'm like, oh my God, your blog hasn't been updated since 2013. Take it down, or, you know, put something up there. Or I'll find out, like, you know, people say, like, I can't get any work, and their bio is something ridiculous. Like, well, I mean, I think there's only two bios.
Our guest from last week, Alex Tetrialt, said that he hasn't touched his in years.
Well, if it's good, then yeah, that's fine, I guess. If you're getting work, then that's good. But if you're not getting work and people aren't finding you, and you're looking at the people out there, like, I mean, the social media mavens that have just exploded, and people like roll their eyes and they're like, oh, okay, he's got 70,000 followers on Instagram, whatever. It's like that. People would kill for that. People will give up their children for that. Like, that's a really big deal. And that person's getting work because of it. So my big question always is, like, how did you do that? And how can someone else do that? And I don't think that necessarily always has to do with talent.
Yeah, absolutely. What about nonprofit photography? What are some things we should be looking at, you know, if that's an area that we want to focus on? How do we get into it?
I think you have, well, there's same as everything else that everybody does, like, customize your portfolio. It, you know, nonprofits are different. They're looking for different things. If you have, like, say, a blood and guts type of a, you know, action thing, you're probably only going to be useful to a very small amount of nonprofits out there. Like, if you're a conflict photographer, let's say, and you don't have any images that show hope. So, you know, we always talk about hope versus need on our workshops when we do our nonprofit photography workshops. So understanding that nonprofits are looking for things that show need. They should be. Not all of them are. Some of them are like any other client, and all they want are like happy portraits. The people who are looking for the need also need to have hope, because we can't just show like the whole situation is desolate and terrible and there's no positivity that could come from it, because then what's a donor going to think? Like, well, obviously I can't help this situation. I'm going to go donate to my local animal shelter or whatever. Yep. And then if you don't show the need, then it's like everything's coming up roses and we solved it.
Right.
You know, like, that's not what their job is to do. Their job is to show you that there's a need, but they're also doing these really amazing things. And so, you know, the photographers that can come up with really good ideas about how can I show that mission? How can I show the goal of the organization while also showing that there is a problem and there is something that needs to be done? And that's where photojournalists, I think, are perfect, because we should be out there, which I'm sure is a totally separate topic, but we should be out there in the news showing a balanced side of the story. And I think, you know, the polarization that we're seeing in the American media is that, you know, we're really starting to see that trend only showing one side of it. But the nonprofit photography that people really are attracted to is when they can see the hope and the need. They can see that there are two sides to, a conflict, or even just something as simple as an animal shelter, or, a soup kitchen or something like that. And the other thing that I think goes to business skills, it goes to nonprofit or for-profit or media, is multimedia, and being able to figure out some way to not just be a one-trick pony. And I think a lot of people are looking to see a little bit different type of photography and a little bit different type of exploration of the creative services that they're paying for. And if you can come to the table and say, like, I want to do an audio slideshow for you guys, and this is what I want to do. I want to do testimonials, and I want to do video portraits, or whatever it is, that it's something a little bit new and different. And that really ties into that expansion of technology, I think. They have to be on Facebook and Instagram and Snap and whatever the hell else is out there these days. Just like, the photographers have to be to market their stuff. And so they're looking for you, I think, to come to the table and say, hey, I've got this really amazing idea, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm here and here's my portfolio and I'm a photographer and I can do your job.
Right. You have to do the hustle and show them a way that, they can present something that maybe they haven't thought of before, and then, help them develop that. Right.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that's what sets everybody apart in terms of business, and nonprofit photography business skills is what people should really be looking at. Like, how can I separate myself from the herd? And I think there's no other, like, I know this is a photojournalism podcast, but like, look at
visual journalism, not just photojournalism.
Visual journalism.
Yes.
I think if we look at the wedding industry, there is no more competitive marketplace than the wedding industry. They have, in the last decade, seen the rise of the mommy blogger, the rise of the, $1,000 weddings from all of these people who are going to get a side job, and they have an Instagram profile.
It's side hustle, they like to call it. That's what the kids like to call it. The side hustle. It's not the third job you're doing after the 2 jobs you just got back from. It's a hustle. Sorry.
It's also half-assed most of the time. Yeah. And the thing is that, like, there are people out there that it makes me, there's a photographer's name is Jamie Winden, and she was a photographer for a really long time, and she was shooting a lot of weddings, and then she just really got tired of shooting weddings, and she wanted to do more nonprofit photography and just like sort of longer term stuff. And so she didn't mind weddings. She still loved doing weddings, and she wanted to do weddings. She didn't want to do events. That's what it was. And so she got a call one day, and they were like, we really want you to come and do like this dinner. It's like annual black tie dinner. And she was like, it's my starting rate for that this year is going to be $5,000, because she didn't want to do it. And this was like a while ago. And they were like, okay, no problem. And the thing is she's an amazing photographer. So like going out there and doing a really good job makes the market great. And Michelle McNally, the photo editor at the New York Times, had an expression that she said in like one of our very first photojournalism classes at Syracuse. She was like, the market is never bad if you're good. And she was like, it's brutal, but that's the truth. And so, if you want to charge that much, it's not a side hustle. You've got to look and be creative and set yourself apart from all of those other people who are out there. And I think that's what the wedding industry can really teach us, because, my God, I have seen some, like, I would not want to shoot weddings right now, ever. It's so competitive, and they're really good. Like, some of the photographers are out there doing these, like, drone photography video, drone videos, and, like, it's amazing. I'm so impressed. I would consider myself with like 2 Leicas on my shoulders, like completely just phoning it in compared to them.
I like that advice though. If you want to get work, just be good. It's kind of like the dating advice I used to hear. If you want to meet women, just be good looking. That's all. The only thing. That's all there is to it.
Right.
Craig, you're in Australia, but you also shoot weddings. Can you back up what Jamie is saying? Is this something you've seen in your sort of wedding career life? Have you seen that? What she's talking about?
I definitely so. I haven't been doing it for that long, only a few years, but I would definitely agree that there's the people who are happy to do it for next to nothing. A couple of Facebook pages that I'm a member of, somebody will, put in a screenshot of looking for a wedding photographer, $40 an hour, and we'll feed you type thing, and then just the comments that ensue after that. So it's very much not appreciated, I think. People don't actually understand the level of either equipment or skill required to really do an amazing wedding. And we have, I've been fortunate to work with a few of the ones here in Brisbane that just are at the top of the game. And so I get to absorb and pick up all of their sort of little skills that they can sort of throw my way. But definitely agree that it's easy to just shoot. People think it's easy to shoot a wedding. You just stand there, point and shoot and click and make everybody smile. But it's definitely not the case. It's definitely not the case.
Weddings terrify me. Shooting a wedding it scares me more than it does covering a Nazi rally or anything else. So I don't know how you guys do it.
Have you shot a wedding, Zach?
Yeah, I've shot a couple, yeah.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, no. It's usually been for... Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Craig.
Sorry, I was going to say I never wanted to shoot weddings. I want to do everything but weddings. and some friends that I did some photos for a save the date type thing before they moved back to France. They loved the photos and loved working with me and said, look, please come to France and shoot our wedding. So it was hard to say no to that. So that's the only reason I got into weddings. Otherwise, I was going to avoid it like the plague. But I've actually found that I really enjoy it. Yeah. Have a good laugh.
Indeed.
I don't mind them. I didn't mind shooting them, but I wouldn't want to do them now.
I've got a couple weddings.
Especially now. I mean, oh my God. You were talking about the drones and wireless shots. I mean, they have to, especially higher end ones, but just even wedding photographers seem to have to know what sports super high end Olympic level sports photographers do, wireless shots, drones, and everything else. And I'm like, I shot my first wedding with I think a D70 and a 2-lens kit as a favor for a friend of a thing, and they were blown away the fact that I stuck through the whole day and gave them so many photos and now I'm like, no, we can get that from anybody.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, I said the bar has really risen with regard to what you need to do if you want to get paid as a wedding photographer. And I think, the problem is that the expectations now are that I'd say the standard bride is probably expecting, the stars and the moon at the cost of, nothing, I would say, or. Yeah,
I don't think I think that's kind of like saying nonprofits aren't willing to pay people. There are nonprofits out there who are willing to pay people.
Right.
They're not your local animal shelter down the street that is the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. And I know all these people will say well, I went to the local, pick something. I went to this local nonprofit and they said they don't have any budget. Well, okay, probably not. But you know what? There are, in any state, in any country, in any part of the world, there is somebody out there with a $500,000, $100,000, $1 million marketing budget that is out there. Now, are they the sexiest thing in the world sometimes? No. I had to photograph one time. I photographed a brochure for the Fiscal Responsibility Association of Washington, D.C. or some lobbying group. Oh my God. It was the most painful, how do I photograph fiscal responity? But they had deep pockets and they were ready to go. And I was like, all right, cool.
Which seems ironic.
Well, I mean, they save their money up so they can afford a photographer.
They know what they're talking about. So, I think when we're looking at, the brides out there, sure, there are definitely $1,500 brides who are there. Now, I'm not just being the child of wedding photographers. I can tell you that everything else fades from that day, including like what you looked like, except for the photos. So why would you possibly skimp on the photos? But there are people who, who will, just like there are nonprofits out there who will, and, newspaper clients and commercial clients and stuff like that. But the people who are out there that I think when you go onto someone's website, like, you guys had, Joe McNally on here, a couple of weeks ago, right? Like, you go onto that guy's website, you're 4 pictures into a slideshow and you're like, worth every penny. You go onto, some random photographers and, just Google photographers in your city and you'll realize like there are a whole bunch of people that are absolutely worth the money that they're charging. And there are some people out there who are not worth the money that you might even have in your budget to pay them.
Right.
And that's where I would say that probably my third piece of advice is like put your, obviously the insurance wasn't like my first piece of advice. I just think like getting yourself covered is important. But, the first one is put your ego away. The second one is keep learning about business skills. And the third one is, constantly compare yourself to your competition and look around and say, the dating pool, right? Like, I will use the dating example because all right, this is like my favorite teaching example when I try to tell people about what a portfolio presentation is like, or like your first job interview. And I think that there's no truer story. I'll tell you a story and then I'll tell you the way that I explain it. But Chris Anderson, the co-founder of Momenta, his first internship, he went to, I think it was the Valley News. I can't remember. It was one of his first internships. He showed up in a suit for the interview. And he became known, I think, as like the kid who showed up in a suit because nobody else did because we're all photographers and we can dress like we're hobos. And so he made a first impression by just wearing a suit. The second one, like his boss said to him, that you're not like going to be wearing a suit every single day. This job, right? He was like, yeah, of course. But he put that first impression out there and he looked really great. Nowadays, the interview is so rare that your portfolio has to be that first impression. And so when I'm giving our business skills lecture, I always say like there's 2 types of guys at a bar, right? There could be the guy who walks up with the like t-shirt that has food stains on it and he's like kind of half in the bag and he walks up next to you in the bar and he's like, hey, foxy lady, can I buy you a drink? And you're like, no, because you're dodgy and I don't want to have anything to do with you.
So that doesn't work. Okay. No.
Then there's the guy
That's why I'm
who shows up in a suit, really well dressed. He smells good. Maybe he's not in a suit. Maybe he's just in like a regular t-shirt that doesn't have a bunch of stains on it. He smells good. He looks good. He's clean. He's polite. He's like, hi, I noticed you from across the bar. And I think you have the most incredible smile. And I would love to share a drink with you. But here's what I'm going to do because you're a female and it's kind of weird to be approached by a stranger these days. So I'm going to tell the bartender to make you a drink, whatever drink you want. I won't get my hands near it, so you're not worried I'm going to drug it or anything like that. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to go to the other side of the bar, and you would make my night if you would just join me over there, and I could maybe try to make you have that smile that I really loved. But if not, I hope you have a really great night, and thanks for lighting up my life with that smile. See you later. Oh my God! Any woman in their right mind would pick option number 2. And that's what a portfolio is like. You go onto one and it's like sponsored by Squarespace at the top or whatever. And there's like, the slideshow component doesn't really work. And the autobiography part of it is just like, and the contact me is just a contact form, which I find to be the most annoying thing in the world because usually I need to know right away if you can do a job or not. Like, give me your freaking phone number. You're not in the CIA.
Yeah.
So, I go onto a website that's all just Kerflooey.
Kerflooey.
Yeah.
Then I go onto a website, I'm like, whoa, big, splashy, beautiful pictures, captions that actually make sense as opposed to Tucson 2001 or whatever. Yeah. And like a bio that says, I am skilled in Photoshop, Lightroom, I can do drone photography. I can do portrait photography. I have my own lighting kit. I have 3 assistants that work with me. I'm like, whoa, done. Hire
and
you.
I won't drug you at the bar.
What's that?
And I won't drug you at the bar.
That's right.
I won't drug you at the bar.
Well, thank you for...
I don't have inappropriate hugs.
Thank you for tuning in to Dating Advice with Jamie. This is we got our caller. Okay, caller, what is your question? You are attracted to a woman. No, I'm just kidding. That's another thing we should do, Jamie. Side show, Dating Advice with Jamie. But
dude,
where were you 10 years ago when I was still on the dating scene? I could have definitely used that advice. I had no idea when I went to a bar.
God, I mean, it's like comparing yourself. Like any guy can turn on a romantic comedy and be like, "Here is the checklist of stuff that you need to do to make yourself attractive to the girl." And just like the photographers can go on to, I mean, there is no better competitive marketing research than going on to the photo shelters, best of the photographers of the year, and you look at those pages and you're like, wow, not only look at the work, but look how it's presented.
Yeah.
Or ask any competition judge. I think that's the other like great competitive marketing is go to a competition judge who like just got through the first round of competitions and say like, what don't you want to see in the next time you do a judging? Because I remember one year when I was running the WHMPA student contest, it was like the 99% rallies for every single student portfolio. Everyone was doing Occupy Wall Street or Occupy San Francisco or Occupy New York or Occupy, and then it was, the next year it's the border story or whatever the hot topic is of the thing. But the people that ended up rising to the top were the ones that were like, whoa, where did that story come from? That's fascinating. I didn't even know that existed. I think that this is different and new and exciting. And when you talk to those competition judges and say like, what are people not covering right now? What do you wish you could see? I think you'll get some really incredible answers on that's where my next, personal project needs to go, or that's where my next portfolio curation should be, and compare yourself to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
become that jealous, spiteful, horrible person who just looks at everyone else's competition.
That's right. Don't do that.
That's excellent advice. Excellent.
So let's go into a little bit of news that came out over the last week or so. Google removed their View Image button, and this is part of a larger change that's going on with Google, specifically with their photos side, is that you can no longer search by photo, and you can no longer automatically view an image. Now, somebody did create an extension like the day after that adds that functionality back in. But Google themselves have taken it out. And this is part of a larger sort of initiative by Google working with Getty to kind of prevent the pervasiveness of, I guess, the stealing of photos. So, for instance, Getty has their watermarked preview images. People use the search photo search tool to find the unwatermarked version, high-res version, and now they have that. And, Getty loses out on a sale, potentially, I guess. So that's kind of like been the sort of impetus for that. What do you guys think of this? Is this the right thing for us? We're all content creators, or we all, dabble in this space, and, we want to protect our content, I guess. Do we like this move by Google? Is this something, would be a positive thing for us, or do you think it's just, it's a Band-Aid, but it's not really going to stop the actual damage being done?
Yes, it's just a Band-Aid. And I think you have to, once you put an image online, I think you have to realize that you've pretty much given up ownership to a certain extent. As much as you can call it your own, there's always going to be somebody out there who has the ability, even if it's just clone out a watermark or something like that, that they will use it if they want to use it. It's on the internet. It's considered for the public. No privacy anymore, no images anymore.
Right. If it exists online,
that's the ultra negative view on it. But
right.
I think we need to understand that we can't patrol it 100%. I'm sure, I've never gone looking for my images. I can't imagine there'd be too many out there that people have grabbed. But
I don't know, you got those fancy underwater model shots. I mean, I'm sure that those are making their rounds.
Fair enough, but if somebody's using it on a billboard or on their page and claiming it as their own, there's ways and means of getting them to take it down or try and sue them. But, I'm all the way over in Australia. Nobody's going to pay attention to me. And that's how I look at it. I've put it online. I want people to see it. If people are going to use it, people are going to use it.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things you can do as a content creator. You can downscale your image. You can add a watermark. You can do a million other things. But it's,
right.
it's always that line of like, how far should you make the watermark? How big and how bold and how much do you have it distract from your image? Or do you just put it out there and, whatever it is,
Yeah. I was always of the opinion I didn't like watermarks because I found they always were very distracting. But now I have my little signature down the bottom, typically in the middle down the bottom. And if somebody wants to crop the picture to get rid of it, they can obviously do that. And I'd say the majority of the images I put on Facebook or Instagram do have a watermark of some sort now. But yeah, you're sort of giving up a bit of rights, I think.
I'm going to put a distracting, bold watermark on all my images now. Not even transparent. Just going to write in white text in the middle of it with like a black stroke. It's like
going for the Julie Jermansky school of. She loves to. She's actually the one, Julie Jermansky, guest of our New Orleans photojournalist down in New Orleans. She actually is the one that got me to even start watermarking things because she's like, you're ruining it for everyone. And it's like, and I mean, the other thing that she also helped me out with, which this is a side thing, I can't possibly say it enough. Get yourself a copyright attorney. Especially if you're a photojournalist, where stuff is going to be used again and again and again. And I think I don't know. I would say photojournalism probably gets stolen more than anything else. I mean, I don't see necessarily wedding photographers having it is at as much. I mean, obviously it is a problem.
They steal just because from each other.
Yeah,
that's
no,
right.
that's why that's why I was caveating as much. Like it's a different sort of stealing, but people that normally would pay you are stealing it when in photojournalism. I'm sure I'll get yelled at by wedding photographers that get their work stolen by wedding magazines and things like that. But get yourself a copyright attorney because once you put anything, even if it is watermarked up on the net, it's kind of gone to some level. But the only way that you can do that is having an attorney and not having to go through the ridiculous rigmarole of not only copyrighting your own work, which now has its own issues thanks to the current changes, but also the fact that you don't have to chase everyone down. They do it for you because I mean this is literally one thing I'm a little like now it's going to be a little more irritating I guess is to make sure I use Google image search to basically find my work that whether it's been used because once you upload to a wire service you also don't know where it goes and I mean I literally use reverse Google image search to find out that. That's the way I found out I had one of Time's top 100 photos of last year. Like, so like, cause obviously you don't get a letter, you don't get anything. I mean, like, find out that it's been in a magazine or find out that's how I found out The Guardian stole one of my photos way back in the day. Like, and so this kind of hurts it a little bit for us. But I mean, overall, I'm happy that people aren't able to just easily just grab high quality images and download it. Now, at least as easy as they used to be. So any step, whether that be watermarking or doing anything else, makes it a little more difficult for that person who literally is usually trying to save time and money by stealing images. Like, so if you're going to make it a little bit more difficult, find any way you can do that.
So that, I mean, this is obviously for Google, but there's obviously other search engines out there.
Yeah.
So I mean, just because you can't download it on Google, you go to Bing or whatever and find it somewhere else.
No, totally. But I mean, it's that one little step. It's that one, just one more thing that makes it more difficult. Everybody on the planet. I mean, I forget what the breakdown. It's like 85% or 95% or something like that of people use Google for their searches, and like all the other ones are, like 12 steps along. If Google's doing it, then hopefully, the other thing is too, is that hopefully this means that Bing sees that fact that this was also this wasn't Google voluntarily doing it. This was as part of a lawsuit. So hopefully it means that Bing and, I don't know, Alta Vista, what else is out there?
DuckDuckGo.
I miss Alta Vista so much. The one thing I would say as well is that this irritates me as a person who does a lot of fact check and other things and kind of like trying to find images to prove for journalism. This is one thing that's a little irritating because it's like being able to get the image and just go through and try to find things is going to be a little more irritating. Like my friends over at Snopes will have a little bit more difficult, I guess. I'm sure they have better ways of doing it than the way I do it. But but other than that, I mean, this is a good step for photojournalism in general, especially at this, since this is completely change the subject, but this comes on the heels of where is the story? Judge rules that embedding a photo tweet is still copyright infringement. So it's also, there's a new lawsuit which we can get into if we want to, or save for another episode. But it seems that kind of digital copyright and the protection around images are starting to at least have some decisions in our favor. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just see how that case pans out. I mean, it still could be not go through the judge, or it could be not ruled inappropriate. But if it does get actually made into law, then I think that's definitely worthy something for us to talk about, because it'll change a lot of the ways that we use imagery and the way people use our imagery.
Yeah.
Well, it's also about the police your shit. You can't get mad. I mean, here's the thing that you can't have the double standard. And I totally agree with Chip Mowery when he used to say ethics are for ethical people. So just because you're ethical doesn't mean somebody else is going to be.
Right.
Oh, no.
And at the same time, if the New York Times was to steal one of your pictures and put it on the front page, you would go bananas and lawyer up and all that other stuff. Yeah. So why is it that you won't do that for, happyclicker.com blog that took your picture and did it that way? I mean, just having a cease and desist email.
The money, who has the money to pay? You can take down some blogger, who's living in a trailer park and, or wherever in Iowa.
What's wrong with trailer parks?
That's wrong with trailer.
I'm using, of course, the lowest common denominator, stereotypical words here, but I think that's the reason why.
I used to live in a trailer park. What's this bashing the trailer parks?
Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry I
wow.
went there.
Okay, we're just gonna jump to a blogger and not give them a home.
I'm just saying, it's chasing the money. It's chasing the money. Forget where they live.
Blogger.
Yes.
It's policing in general. I mean, I had an image, one of my most famous pictures was stolen in a matter of 24 hours. I mean, there were crazy. I mean, there was a Klan blog that took it. It was a picture of Obama. There was a Klan blog that took it. There was a totally reputable, amazing, nice, news blogger person who took it. There are all these people that it didn't matter what any political persuasion it was. They all just took it. And so I had an email that was a bill because somebody had said, go out and get your cease and desist letter and have that, but just send them an invoice.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the crazy thing about policing it was, though, I mean, and Drudge took it at the same time. I'm sure I could have gone after them for a lot more money, but I was just look, if you're going to use it, pay me.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
That's all there is to it, and it worked out fine. Three people, the three people that I told to take it down, because I didn't even want money from them. I just wanted them to take it down. Took it down. But
the Clans guys paid straight away. Is that right?
Yeah, they did. I was really excited to be on their homepage for 2 years. But the thing is,
call me if you want more work, please. That's right. Hey, work's work, right?
Hey,
I listened to a photographer many years ago who gave similar sort of advice, in that, he had work that was well-known, of well-known people, and, he would find it on people's websites and whatnot who did not pay him to use that imagery, and he would actually just send them an invoice, and they would pay, and he actually got a very nice side hustle of money coming in from that, where, just by sending out invoices to these websites that were using his stuff, what he would have charged them, he was actually making a decent amount of money just off that. So, very good advice, Jamie.
There's an educational component to it, too. There are people that I've sent cease and desist letters to that legitimately had no understanding of the fact that, their corporate newsletter wasn't considered editorial. And I would have to say, okay, look, I understand that you guys think that this is an editorial because it looks like a newspaper, but that's not the same thing. And here's why, and here's how it can go. And just like with nonprofits, sometimes when they lowball people, as we were talking about before, I think that the assumption of aggression or the assumption of harm is what makes those conversations go south, because some people might legitimately just not know that, oh, I was supposed to pay for that, or, oh, do you have more of those? Because I would really like to pay you for them. And you're like, heck yeah, thank you so much. I would love to give you an entire slideshow for X amount of dollars.
Or wait until you get into the argument of fair use, which is something I thoroughly enjoy.
Yes.
Oh no, it's fair use. I'm like, no, you don't understand what fair use is. I had that with a news outfit trying to complain, trying to say, oh no, it's okay. We can use your image because it's for fair use. And I'm like, no, you're using it as an illustration within an article about the news story. You're not even discussing it. Like, look at, like if it's a critique, okay, but still, we're still going to have this argument. But
I think if people aren't actually having that discussion and they're not going after the people that are stealing their work, if I were a politician and I were to realize, like, wow, somebody comes up with some statistic, like 75% of most copyright infringement claims never actually get contacted by the photographer, then it's like, well, then why are we even legislating around this to begin with? It's obvious that this is all just fair use and nobody needs to get paid. And the photographers don't care because they're not policing their stuff. So yeah, we might as well just make it all open to the public after 2 years or something like that. And I think that that's where, the lazy factor of photographers. I mean, Jesus, doesn't Harrington's book have like an entire chapter on how to register your copyright and how to do it? And like, there's a downloadable form that's super easy. Like, it's not that hard. It's time consuming, but it protects everybody.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Except for the Australians who, we don't know what your laws are all about.
It's a free open, there's shrimp on the Barbie and there's copyrights.
Prawns.
Well, I mean, they're all criminals, so I mean, they wouldn't be in Australia if it wasn't. Oh wait, no.
Oh my gosh. All right, well, moving on. Let's talk about technology. Let's talk about equipment. Fujifilm has unveiled the new X-H1. It's a 4K camera that shoots 4K video as well as stills and has in-body stabilization. And I just want to say to Fuji, welcome to the party. The GH5 has been doing this since last year. About time.
Didn't take long.
About time you got to where we're at. I'll read off some specs here for those of you who care. It's got a 24.3 megapixel APS-C sensor. It's got an ISO range of 200 to 12,800, which is expandable up to 51,200. I'm sure those images just look great. It can shoot 14 frame per second continuous shooting. It can shoot 120 frame per second high-speed video at 1080p. It's got some neat little other features here, but in-body stabilization, I think, is, again, the big selling point for a camera like this, the 5-axis stabilization. I've got that on my GH5, and when you pair it up with a lens that has stabilization, it's beautiful. It's like silky smooth. Again, I'm a big fan of micro four thirds cameras. I think if I was a Fuji shooter, I would definitely upgrade to this, but I'm not a Fuji guy. I'm a Panasonic guy, as I've mentioned many times on the show. But again, I throw it out to the audience, throw it out to the panelists here. Anybody think this camera is anything that perhaps they're interested in or intrigued by? Do you like the in-body stabilization? Is this all what it's all about for you? Do you like to shoot video? I know you like to shoot video, Zach.
I would, if I'm torn on if this was full frame, I'd be all about it. Especially as like a second camera or something like that, or as a second body set. But it's cropped. I'd have to see how it like matches up to anything. The example images they have there aren't exactly spectacular. So it's hard to tell. I don't think that they're edited at all or anything like that. Because they look, the color looks a little off and whatever.
Did you notice the color on all of their promo shots looked a little yellow? Like everything tended towards the yellow.
My guess is that these aren't edited at all, and that they just straight from the camera, or I would assume. I don't know. But it doesn't say one way or the other. It doesn't. Usually they would say that it is. But it doesn't say whether it's edited at all. But it's weird that they would actually offer. That would be, these are the images that they offer up as examples of what the camera does. That when clearly, I can look at that and go, wait, I get why it's yellow. Like I get why because the volleyball shot. Clearly it's yellow lighting, like in the arena, but even then, like, I don't know, the race car shot seems a little weird, but also that like weird mountain photo, like it almost looks edited, but again, it's like, I don't know, it's a very confusing set, but that's not really weird. I see that all the time for, Nikon usually isn't that bad. I can't remember the last time for Canon, but Sony, I feel like Sony and Panasonic, and when they release these example images for new cameras, I always go, wait, this is what you're using as because it's like, I mean, these have to be professional photographers that are, you wouldn't hand it to somebody. Oh, it's like, oh, you just work at Fuji. Here, go have. They give, Nikon gives it to professionals to shoot so that it looks the best. It's the same just like Apple does too with their iPhone, the iPhone photo campaign that they did, where they're like, they hand the phone to a professional award-winning photojournalist or something like that and go, look at, this is what you can get with your images. It's like, right. Yeah, sure.
With
if I had a whole lighting set up and it was attached to a drone and everything like that, yeah, I could do that. But yeah, no, this is weird. I would be, but back to the camera, I'd be totally about it if, because I would love to start having something a little bit lighter, as I'm starting to get into that age group where, and don't smile at me with your smug Leica using.
Yes, they're very lightweight.
but no, it's just like, it'd be nice to move to something, and also 4K. I mean, like, I'm happy that they're doing that. I just wish I wish it would full frame, and then I would try it out. But I'm doubtful about anything other than full frame nowadays. So
the glass on those cameras, though, they're pretty nice. Like we had a student who came on one of our workshops, and he was shooting two. I think he had two of the Fuji bodies, not this one, obviously, but I was impressed with the glass. There's definitely that even with the compression of the frame itself, it actually ended up being a really great camera, and that concept of being able to Bluetooth your images to your Instagram.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Right away. Pretty awesome.
Fix your, please.
One of my favorite features of the GH5 is the ability to wirelessly look at what my screen is, my camera is looking at on my phone, and be able to take pictures remotely. That's helped me out in so many different situations. I did a shot, especially with the kids. It's like I just have to be able to see the image. If I'm trying to do family photos, because I'm out there by myself with the tripod and the camera and stuff like that, so it helps me out in controlling the camera, and really takes away the need to have a bunch of different other little devices. Like I remember with my 5D Mark II, I had a little infrared clicker thing. I tried to use that to take the pictures and stuff like that. Although, a little pro tip, if you're trying to do family photos and you've got kids who aren't cooperative, I just set the thing onto time-lapse and shoot a photo a second. And there's bound to be at least one frame where everybody's smiling and looking at the camera. It only lasts for about a second, so you have to be very aware of it.
I just cast new children if they're not doing their job.
Right, exactly.
Just get everyone.
Good call.
Yeah.
Yes.
I send my kids back to central casting and get to that are more amenable. All right, well, let's talk about the World Press Photo Competition. We're going to close our show off with that and talk about the nominees that were just announced. I'm going to bring them up here on the screen. Let's see if this works. But there's definitely some interesting stuff here. I think some stuff that we all kind of thought would come up. That's my son, and it's not showing up. Okay, well, let's just talk about it then. I want to start with what I think is the most interesting, just because I think, Zach, you called it. And we go down here. What is it? I'm looking at the nominations, which you can find the link. Spot News. Zach, what do you think of the Spot News picks here for the nominees?
Yeah, I didn't win. Or I didn't get nominated. Everything.
Another photograph from Charlottesville got
nominated. Because I know that when it comes to these awards and that sort of thing, it's probably that photo, which is spectacular. It's it's just such an amazing image that it's probably gonna at least get nominated for everything, if not win a bunch of things, because it deserves it. I mean, it's everything that a photojournalist should, spot news especially, like it should be. It in one image, it describes that entire part of Charlottesville. You don't need to know anything else. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, other than it's well deserved. So,
do you think the shot is better or worse for the fact that there's the dude in the foreground running after the scene? Do you think that makes the shot better? Okay.
I think you wouldn't
want to have him out of the frame so you can see more of what's going on.
I mean, it adds a depth to the scene. I mean, let's talk about it like any image. I'd want the guy in the right hand side to be out of the frame, but other than that, like I might have cropped it there. I think that the guy running adds a depth to it. It adds the urgency to the scene. The fact that, because I mean, I know what happened. The car drove through a bunch of people before this shot was taken. So that tells you, at least within a story, it tells you that this didn't just happen. Like at least 3 seconds ago, people are already reacting to it. So I don't know. I mean, like much about it to. I think that it adds depth to it. It adds. Otherwise, it just looks like it would probably just be like a wide shot of the thing happening. I don't know. I think it's better for it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on any of the other Spot News photos team, or any of the photos that got nominated this year?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it says a lot about our society right now that there are 2 Spot News photos that were chosen for Photo of the Year, of 6. So I think that sort of says what the judging's mindset is, that we're looking at things that are, horrifying us in the moment, as opposed to some of these other, long-term crises like the Rohingya crisis. I was actually kind of most surprised by the portrait. I thought that was Adam Ferguson's image. I was like, whoa, there's a portrait in the Photo of the Year. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
The stunning portrait of the Boko Haram young woman who, for the World Press, if you go to the gallery, the top 6 photos that they have that are currently being judged for the Photo of the Year.
Yeah.
Although I do think that the battle for Mosul is also really, really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's a lot of layering. It's just photographically, it's a really incredible image. And some years I see the World Press Photo of the Year and I think like, that would not have been my choice.
No.
Yeah.
But I think each one of these has some really powerful messages to it.
We get the World Press comes to Brisbane every year, and since I moved here, I've been going, and you always walk out feeling a little bit sad, a little bit depressed, because the ones that are winning, the ones that are, in fact, I don't know what it's like elsewhere, but they actually have a section where it's displayed that it's be careful going in here, or not for children as such, and you go in there prepared for blood and guts and death and destruction, and this is the world we live in. Which is, I don't know. I'm glad they report it. I just wish it wasn't such a big event, or so many stories reporting it.
Yeah,
a lot of
tragedy and death and war. That is definitely obviously what we're always going to be featuring. I don't see any Spot News of local firefighter save kitten from tree.
No,
that doesn't really play well in the World Press photo competition. It looks like if you want to have a successful image here, you have to have fire in it, fire and death and blood. If you have all those things,
or be a man.
I was
Sorry, guys.
Are there no female nominees?
There are no female
there are.
nominees.
Amy, of course, Amy Vitale's there.
No, I mean in the World Press Photo of the Year, though. Pat men. But
Luca
Locatelli is a man?
What's that?
No, I mean, there are women in the list of the nominees, of course, but the thing is that I think it should be discussed that, like, wow, a lot of that spot news and a lot of the conflict photography is gearing itself much more towards, seeing all male names in there. And I think that is part of the discussion for another time, obviously, but it's getting, I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's getting more dangerous to be a female in some of these conflict situations, and the protections that used to be available in some regards are not there. So I wouldn't say that it's sexist judging. I think it has to do with, wow, what are our conflict zones, and what are even some of the, just dicier situations looking like when it comes to having a female in the field.
Right. Yeah,
Which also speaks. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the judging of any photo competition is probably the most anti-sexist thing I can think of, because in terms of just, what are they judging on? They're just looking at images, right? I don't think they're thinking like, oh, well, this image here was shot by a man, so let's make sure to pick that one.
I don't think
I
don't think that some contests are name blind. I don't think that World Press is. I saw a discussion about this. I'm trying to remember the specifics. Okay. So, technically they do know. Whether or not that would go into it. But to go on to your Jamie's point before, it speaks to the fact that since the photos that do win or that get nominated are to be more dangerous to be a woman and to photograph, but those are the type of images that get nominated, but not say something, more photo essay work or more domestic work and that sort of thing don't win. I don't know. It causes less chance of potentially of a female photographer being nominated because of the stuff that the type of work that normally wins, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I don't think Zach meant domestic work by in the kitchen. I think he meant domestic as in. I saw Jamie, your face as you said it.
I believe that there should be more culinary photography as the World Press Photo of the Year.
First of all, everyone should be making pictures of their food because that's exciting.
Yeah, how come there are no pictures of food in the nominees? Come on.
Well, and I think it does speak to. In a lot of these competitions, especially World Press, it really does. That's why I was so surprised by the portrait. Like, the fact that a portrait was up there is pretty impressive because it's a non-shock value photo of the year. But I'm not discrediting any of these images. They're all spectacular. But take Amy Vitale's long-term project that she's been doing on poaching, right? We actually have the ability to change the numbers when it comes to endangered species. This is something we could stop and we could put our resources towards. Are we going to be able to stop war? And are we going to be able to stop a lot of the things that get as the best of the best, when in actuality we could be looking at some of these things and saying, is the issue equally as important as the construction and the art? And sometimes, it would be really nice to see that story of something that is a little bit quieter, like poaching, or, something that we can do something about, as opposed to, I'm fairly certain if I remember my history right, that's right. We've been killing each other for a really long time. And we might be able to do something.
I will say I'm very happy that I think this is the first year, right, that they added the environment category.
Yes,
for it. I'm really happy that they did that because I think that it allows for a different type of imagery of environmental issues to be nominated, as opposed to, oh, this is the effect of global warming. Here's a huge hurricane or flooding, the disaster porn sort of stuff. And it allows for things like, I'm actually surprised that her poaching work wasn't nominated in here, but I guess that's, who knows how it was. No, but it's, no, I don't
mean in the top 6?
No, in the top, her poaching is under nature.
Oh, that's right.
Which is also weird that there's now a nature category and an environment, but it's not an environment, which is specifically for environmental kind of destruction stories. But either way, but it allows for something like that to at least have a second chance of being nominated. I'd like to see other awards do that as well. I think that I'm trying to remember. I think there's at least one other major award that does something like it, whether it has a climate change award or something like that. But I'm very happy to see that addition.
And pretty happy for Ivor Prickett, who has gotten a bunch of nominations. He's got a pretty good chance of getting Press Photographer of the Year, Press Photo of the Year. So good luck to Ivor. If you're listening, come on the show. Talk about it.
I win. The one rant, this is somewhat upset. I love the fact that they add technical information. This is something that I've always complained, and I think I've done before on this show. But when I would like to see when I go into a gallery, especially for photojournalism, I would love to see technical information. What lens, what camera? I wish that they added the lens and camera information. They just add the XF data, basically shutter speed and f-stop. I would like to see more of that because I think that it always helps me learn more about the image.
Yeah.
And just technical. It's like kind of that stuff you just put in the back of your head as you know, how the image was created. You know, they do it for every other art form. You know, so if it's oil on canvas or whatever, you see that, but they don't give any sort of information ever for an image. You don't know if it was shot on film. You don't know if it was shot on a pinhole camera. Like, you don't know what it was done. Well,
during the nomination process in general, I mean, I tip my hat to World Press. I think they got like 11,000 submissions or something last year, or maybe that was the number of photographers that submitted. So I mean, the fact that they can even just cull through that and get it down to this beautiful number is really impressive. And those poor guys, man. I really think that World Press has done an amazing job of trying to every year stand up for visual integrity and, you know, truth in reporting when it comes to making sure that images haven't been manipulated, and even in the ways that the general public doesn't understand as a manipulation. And they unfortunately are always the ones who get nailed to the wall for it. And they're trying every year to open the dialogue. So I think that's why World Press should be given the respect that it's due, because they really try.
Yeah. I'm really happy, by the way. I don't see a lot of contest contrast. You know, I'm trying to remember what was the photojournalist who had the joke about. It's like, now it's time. You know, it's like, oh, it's time to re-edit my photos for contests. So up the contrast and you know, up the grain and do everything, make it edgy. I don't really see any of that in these images. And that's something that's new. And so I'm very happy to stop seeing that.
Oh my God, that first photo in the people section by, and I'm going to butcher this name, but Huifeng Li of the Earth Kiln, the one that's titled Earth Kiln. Yeah. Oh my God, it's so gorgeous. Like, there's no Photoshop needed. That is just beautiful light, and that's a beautiful way to see. A painting. Yeah. Yeah, it's just gorgeous. Like, I really appreciate the fact that the contest, you know, holds up images like that. That's just a quiet, beautiful moment in documentary type of perspective that it doesn't have to be sad. It can just be beautiful.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think that brings us to end of this week's show. I want to thank, of course, our guest, Jamie, for taking time out and talking to us about all kinds of great stuff, giving us some excellent tips, not only on how to grow our business, but also maybe meet somebody. You know, you never know.
Sure.
So they're interchangeable, really, I think.
So you're supposed to meet somebody by using QuickBooks, right? And then what you do is you go to
a nonprofit.
On me with QuickBooks right now, I'm in a very different position.
You know Excel? Hey, how you doing?
You just go to a nonprofit and you say, "Hey, I'm a great guy. I've got a car,
I know formulas,
and a house, and I'd make a great husband." So that's what you gotta do, I believe.
I'm glad to help in any way that I can.
There Well, there you go.
Just
My
remember
wife's-
consent. That's all we need, guys.
And we made it through the whole show without a political deviation, so it was good.
So about guns, let's talk about. Oh wait, no, we're out of time. Next
We
week.
definitely dogged on Australia way too much. So, I mean, if we didn't talk about politics, we dogged on the one guy who wasn't like the rest of us. So I don't know if we're necessarily all good.
I just want to add, Alex met his wife while taking her picture. So congratulations, Alex. You're an inspiration to all of us.
It was surprising because it was taken with a 500 millimeter lens
Oh.
through. No, but
From a moving car
Through the bushes. That's right.
at the beach.
I was taking photos of her for 6 months before she noticed me.
She found them all pinned up to my wall with the candles and everything.
Right.
Oh, Alex.
Oh, wow.
We're just giving you a hard time. Anyways, that completes our show, episode 112. Again, I want to thank you so much, Jamie. In addition, of course, Craig. And for Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 112. And we are out!